Hello, people of God in our Wausau parishes, and welcome to this week's Quick Things, which is a conversation. First of all, a couple of announcements. For St. Anne parishioners, if you haven't signed up for the parish directory, please do so. Remarkably and wonderfully, there are only a few spots remaining next week. So that would be like May 16, 17, 18. But we'll also be looking in the next day or two to add additional time. So check the sign up page. The link is in the Quick Things email. For everybody, remember our Eucharistic procession, the body of Christ on the move, coming up June 2nd. Try with all your might to come to the 10:30 Mass at St. Michael's, and from there we will process. Those of us who are able will process from St. Michael to the Community Partners Campus, where the Good Shepherd Shelter is located. We'll be walking along 6th Street, and then we'll stop at the 400 block, kind of regroup. People can join us there who can't walk or don't want to walk the whole way, and we'll make our way then from the 400 block to the new Partners Campus and the Good Shepherd, or the Community Partners Campus and the Good Shepherd Shelter. We'll talk more about that, but mark that on your calendar, June 2nd. Everybody, Resurrection, St. Michael, St. Anne parishes, we hope we can all gather for Mass that day at 10:30 and be part of that procession. A little bit here and there, or even at the end for benediction at the shelter. So I'm happy to have a conversation today, a little bit of kind of the history of Catholicism in Wausau and how we are preserving some of the history, the legacy that we have as a Catholic community in Wausau. And joining me are Jeff Pleer, a member of Resurrection Parish, and Tom Lella, music liturgy director for Eastside Parishes and a Catholic historian of sorts, I call him, here in Wausau. So I asked Tom, Jeff and I were already scheduled to meet, but I asked Tom to join us to fill in some historical gaps that might occur along the way. Before we get into the kind of the meat of the conversation, Jeff and Tom, can you tell us just a little bit about, I know what I was going to ask both of you. So St. Anne's is working on a new directory, and this is the Eastside Parish directory. Jeff, are you and Amy in the new directory?
Should be, yeah, we are.
Good.
Yeah,
And Tom, I know
yeah.
you're in here. You probably had to for your job.
Yes, of course.
So Jeff, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and why I'm even talking to you today about what we're going to talk about?
Well, I've my wife and I have been parishioners, on the east side, originally at St. Mary's, going back probably well over 30 years, and of course currently our Resurrection. I've been active on the Finance Council for many years, and I have had experience, I'll say, with fundraising. We did a capital campaign. I don't know. Time flies. Maybe it's 8 years ago now, 10 years ago. Can't remember the name of it. And of course, now the most recent capital campaign, which led to our being able to fund the work that we're doing relative to the masonry restoration and some interior plaster work as well at Resurrection Church at the church building.
Sure. Great. And we'll get to that in just a minute. Tom, how did you become liturgy music director at Eastside Parishes? What's your story?
It's a long ago history, but back in 1999, I'll make this short, my uncle died, and I was here for the funeral, and Father Fred at that time leaned over to Father Steve and said, wouldn't that be nice if we had one of those here with us, a liturgist? And I was playing the organ for his funeral at that time. And so that's how
And that would be Father Fred Kulovitz and Father Steve Gross.
That is correct.
A blessed
That's
memory.
correct.
Okay.
A blessed memory, yes. And so, time travels on. We're 24 years later, and I've been here and gone twice for various reasons, but happy to be back. And I can trace my history back to the parishes. St. Michael's back to the early 1900s. My grandparents were married at St. Michael's in 1915, a double wedding.
Oh, wow.
2 sisters married 2 brothers.
Interesting. Well, so the two of you have mentioned all the 3 founding parishes of Wausau. St. Mary, St. James. I don't think we mentioned St. James by name, but that is the church that we're talking about in terms of the restoration that's underway. And Tom, you mentioned St. Michael. So St. Mary was the founding parish in Wausau, correct, Tom?
Correct. 1867.
1867. And then St. James came
1905.
1905. And then St. Michael.
1887.
Oh, so St. Michael was next.
In the middle.
Yeah. Okay. And but is the St. Mary's building the original building?
It's not. I believe it's the second building, but I don't think it's the third. I think it's the second. There was a little one early on, and then about 18. What are we looking at? 70 something. Can't remember. I'm looking at the book as we're talking. 1875. The priest came somewhere in the 1870s. That building was constructed.
Okay, so it is the oldest church building in Wausau.
Correct.
So Tom, there was a major fire, correct, at
Yes.
St. Mary's?
In 1953-ish, something like that.
Yeah.
Totally destroyed the interior of the building.
Oh, okay.
Completely gutted, and then that was restored a year later. They were back in.
But the shell, the exterior was maintained or kept.
Correct. Everything but the stained glass windows.
So St. James would be the oldest church in Wausau that hasn't endured a fire or some kind of devastation along the way.
Well, isn't that interesting?
Although Father Joe Richards almost started on fire a couple of years ago.
That's right.
Not just that, but during construction, one of the piers of St. James was faulty, and they had started work on the dome itself. And in the early morning in September, the dome collapsed, taking brick and steel and everything down with it. 2 of the workers were killed, several were injured. So there's a little history with devastation.
Okay, so there has been some tragedy there. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and so St. Anne's, Holy Name, St. Matthew's on the west side of the river. None of that history, and that gets to the heart of the restoration, Jeff. That it's the building itself that is such a treasure. I mean, the people who gather there that is the church, but the building is the legacy that's been handed on to us since 1905. Wow. So what's going on? Why is there all that impressive scaffolding around?
Yeah. So maybe a little bit of a point of clarification. I think, and Tom, maybe you can help me with this. I think that the St. James parishioners moved into that church and took a lot of things with them, including the altar and a number of other things. I think it was around 1910 or 12. Is that, Tom, does that sound about right relative to the construction
Yep.
of the building we're working on?
The parish was founded in 1905.
Yeah.
There was a small church on the corner where the rectory now stands. That was a Methodist church. That was what was purchased first. And then in 1911, the cornerstone was laid. That's what the cornerstone did.
Okay. So the parish moved in about 1912 or so.
Okay.
So
it takes a while to get established.
Yeah. And the remarkable thing, and Tom, being the East Side historian, please stop me if I'm going astray.
Trust me, Jeff, his expertise is not limited to the East Side.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I have to be really careful. So I've read somewhere over the years that and again, remember, I think the church was probably built without much of a basement, probably just a hole in the ground, and I'm sure there wasn't much plumbing in it, and they moved everything in, including the altar. But I believe the building itself was constructed for something in the neighborhood of $50,000, which is mind blowing. But you go back to 1910, 1912, inflation is probably total something on the order of 5 cents on the dollar, maybe less today. So, but a lot
of people in those days, a lot of the stuff was done by the people. I mean, I know I was pastor of St. Stanislaus Kostka in Stevens Point, and farmers came in with their horses and excavated themselves That's why the basement, the parish hall isn't very deep. It's, they could, but, you know, it is what it is.
Just got so deep and they said, okay,
We can't
we're
do it
done.
anymore. Yeah.
Right. So, you know, time has passed, right? So we're 115 years on roughly. And it was time for a major restoration of the exterior brickwork. So the masonry work. And you know, this might just be a good time to jump in with some pictures.
Sure.
Yeah, because the pictures are very interesting. So let's see if we can get this done.
You should be able to share it yourself.
Yes. Here we go.
There we go.
How's that?
Yep. There we go. Yep.
Okay, there we go. So obviously, that's a photo of the exterior shortly after the scaffolding went up. So 110 years on, we can see that there's been some deterioration in the masonry. So what we're looking at here is one of the corners of the towers, and most of the work has been coming along, been on the towers, which are now essentially complete. So they're 98, 99% complete in terms of the actual masonry restoration. So what we see here is the interior. The exterior has been essentially dismantled. That outer row of bricks. This is the the strength of the tower, which is good. But the exterior layer of brick has been taken out completely. Many of those bricks were saved, conserved. One of the things that was very important about this entire undertaking is to recognize that the bricks dating from, again, 1910, 1915, are generally softer than modern bricks. And modern bricks probably came on the scene not too long after the construction of the church, but it's very important that the brick be compatible, that any bricks that are needing to be replaced, and there were a number that needed to be replaced, were salvaged bricks of similar size and similar color, that Masonry Restoration is a company that's doing the work, were able to source for use in the building. Some bricks were moved from other parts of the project to more prominent parts. So a lot of thought and a lot of care given to what goes where, and being, I'll say, sympathetic to the structural integrity of the building, the history of the building, things relative to that. So here's a view again on the tower, where you can see that the tuck pointing has been removed, and most of it was taken out on the towers after you got up above, say, the entrance door on the north side. The north side of the towers did experience the most wear and tear, I'll say, over the years. North wind, exposure to the elements were more severe in that area. So all that tuck pointing comes out. They had to go pretty deep. What they do is they go down to where the original mortar is still sound, and then stop. Same thing in another area here off on the right. You can see where another corner of the tower has been, I'll say, taken apart and then reassembled. There's a joint right along here, which will ultimately be filled, and that's going to be filled with a flexible material, more of a caulk. Something you mentioned, Tom, that was kind of interesting, a settlement and the collapsing of the dome resulting from that, is you can see that there's a little bit of that gap varies a little bit in size. So there are some places on the towers that are not quite plumb. And one of the things that struck me, and you can't tell for sure, but the folks from Masonry Restoration indicated that it's entirely possible that tilt, I'll say, that little bit of lean being a little bit out of plumb, may have resulted a year or two after the original construction.
Hmm.
So, you know, we may be seeing something here that is old news. At any rate, nothing to be concerned about, but just kind of interesting stuff, you know, as you get into these buildings and see what you see.
Since you mentioned that, Jeff, were there any other surprises that people have discovered as they're working on the project?
Yeah, so no, no surprises. And usually we think of surprises as maybe not good, particularly, you know, on a project like this. But if there are any surprises, they've been, you know, to the favorable side. The number of brick that needed to be replaced is significantly less than what was anticipated. And that's resulting in something in the neighborhood of a $25,000 favorable variance in the cost. And essentially, that's $25,000 that we can redirect to doing more work than we had originally planned to be in the scope of the project and our budget. It's you know, likely that we may be able to get as much of an additional week of work on the project, given how things are going. We're you know, we're kind of we're ahead of plan and under budget. You know, and there I said it. You know, hopefully I'm not going to, you know, get you know, see a reversal on that. But that's been consistently the you know, the progress that's been made. So what you can see here in this photo are areas that have been all re-tuck pointed, and it looks awesome. And now one of the things that does get done after that re-tuck pointing is done is there's a process called washing, and that's it's slightly acidic. It kind of, I'll say, this is not an official term, I'm sure, but sort of weathers in the new mortar to better match or blend with the old. Now there's virtually no old mortar here, but it gives a little more of a natural appearance, I'll say. Tends to blend in any areas. Some color variation you may see. For instance, here that's either a shadow, or over time it does tend to dry. So as you know, go look at the project and see it ongoing, you'll see different color. But this wash process levels everything out, takes away any areas where there's you know, maybe a little smearing of the mortar. So really cleans it up and gets it nice looking, real nice looking. So here's one of those corners that were rebuilt. And you can see up here where there is some work to be due. I'd mentioned that we were 98% along on the towers, on the masonry work. Up next is reworking these areas of sand, stone and some concrete that was added in subsequent years. So that's going to be either repaired or replaced. And it's going to be done in stone. One of the things that early on they talked about is, you know, we could, they said, you could put, you know, you could put metal capping on it. And say, well, what would that look like, right? With all of the brick and mortar and stone. And they said, well, it'd look a little different. And so opted not to look a little different, opted for it to be, again, sympathetic to the original appearance and construction insofar as is possible. Here's another area. This is actually the front of the church. So you can see the rose window off to the right. And then here is probably a pretty good indication of where things are more dry. There wasn't as much weathering either. So we, you know, down towards here, you're probably looking at some more original mortar. This again is one of those areas that has been off to the left here, has been significantly restored. So this is the other side. So this is the south side, the right side. We can see the rose window here, the front of the church here. And this tower, the south tower, was in a little better, significantly better shape, I'll say, than the north tower. Again, a lot of, on the facade, a lot of removal of that old tuck pointing and restoration of the masonry. So I took a picture, or I have a picture of this. I did not take this picture. I took this picture and put it into the slides that we have here, because one of the things that I've noticed is that right along in here, there's little architectural details like this all over the church. This would tend to, I think, there's probably some erosion, some collection of water. So everything was kind of, eroded and washed out in these areas. So all of these areas needed some attention. This is way up at the top. So this is at the top of the steeple, essentially. Right down in here in the lower right is, I believe, the top of the opening into the belfry, the bell tower, which are the brown louvers are what we would see most prominently from the street. So this is getting way up there. I gotta. Is it okay if I jump in and tell a little story here? Do we have
Yeah,
time
of
for that?
course. Yeah.
Okay. So last Sunday, I was ushering, and it was a beautiful day. So I managed to get the plum job of opening the doors into Francis Hall and greeting folks as they arrived. And I heard a cardinal chirping, and I turned around. There was a cardinal, near the statue of Mary there, and it was kind of going up and up and up, and it went up to a little higher point, and it went up a little further onto the corner of the addition, and then up to a platform up on the church. And I'm thinking, this bird's going higher and higher. And then it went to the top of the scaffolding, flew to the very top of the scaffolding, and then its next leg up was to the very top of the steeple, right on top of the tip top of the cross. And I thought, wow, that was, maybe it had to be there, but I thought that was pretty cool.
Oh, cool. Yeah. And it didn't need the scaffolding to get up there.
And the bird had made it look so easy, and the scaffolding itself is a major undertaking.
Well, have you been up there at all, Jeff?
I have.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't quite make it this high, but they wouldn't let me up here. I don't think there's quite enough to keep me from doing something I shouldn't.
Okay.
So, but yeah, it was interesting to get up there and get a close look at it and get up there. There's you can see quite a ways. It's up there.
I bet. I suppose a better pastor would have gone up there, and well, I still couldn't I?
You could, absolutely. Yeah.
I'll have to work on it next week.
Indeed.
Well, how many more weeks will it be there? I guess that leads to that.
Yeah, so the scaffolding is slated to start coming down in the early part of June.
Okay.
And that's going to be about a 10-day disassembly. It took about 10 days to get it up, maybe 8. It went fairly well. So they got 10 days budgeted to take it down. And I don't know if you can see in this picture that I have up now, but as they take it down, they actually have a little work to do, because the scaffolding, that's the back. So the scaffolding is actually, let's see what finds it. Okay, so right up here, the scaffolding is actually secured to the building, right into the brickwork. So as they take it down, they will repair those areas where the scaffolding was mounted to the building.
Oh.
So that scaffolding should be down mid-June for sure, I would say. And so this is actually the back, and as that scaffolding comes down, more workers are going to be able to be directed to the east wall. So this is nothing that anyone's going to see unless you make an effort. But nonetheless, it was in need of substantial repair. Fortunately, the original bricks are all quite sound, so they had to go pretty deep with the removal of the mortar and then retuck pointing. But that's it's going to be in much better shape. That was probably the most weathered of the, which is interesting. It probably has something to do with some splashing and some of the things that were happening relative to the gutters up here. So that's actually, and it's not too exciting to talk about the gutters, but that's an important part of the project where a lot of this water is going to be redirected into the storm sewer system. And I think this week there's going to be some major excavation taking place on that south side of the church, along McClellan Street there, between McClellan and 3rd. They're going to do some hydro cutting, so they're going to be cutting underneath existing concrete, installing a drainage system for that back part of the church. And they're going to do that with I'll say a minimum of disruption of the existing concrete. So that's going to be coming up this week. This is jumping back to the tower. So as before that scaffolding comes down, these are the areas I was talking about that are going to be some in need of some repair relative to the stonework. So that's another area that's been restored. More restoration there. So this is also something, there's a fair amount of window work that's being done. This is probably the worst window. All the others are going to need considerably less attention. All of them are sound. None of them are leaking. None of the stained glass is in jeopardy. But this, you can see that this is decayed. This is a piece of wood trim that's rotted away. It's going to be refabricated and replaced with wood trim. It'll get an oil-based primer and then a coat of several coats of paint consistent with what we have in other areas. And then that ought to be good for another, with a little maintenance, another 100 years, I guess. So that is one of several windows that are being, that's the other side of that same window. You can see the other is, this is going to, it's going to be able to be stripped down, and some areas will be conserved, I'll say, with a compound that you inject into the wood, and it flows into it and stabilizes it. But that's the worst of the windows. Let's see, I'm not sure exactly why I included this, but it's, it's just kind of another view of where that brickwork is really looking, I'll say as good as new. Some more of that. So these joints are going to be sealed too, and that's probably ongoing. I'm going to say this week, all of these joints being sealed, cleaned out and sealed. And those will be sealed with a flexible material that will be able to move with the building, with the freezing and thawing. Weather extremes actually causes, and that's why type of brick material is so important. If the bricks adjacent to each other are moving differently in response to temperature and humidity and those changes, that's when damage can happen. So this is a view at the tip top of the louvers, and you can see that, and I'm not sure, I can't tell for sure which, so this would, I can say with confidence, this is probably not the North Tower, but this is an instance where there really wasn't a whole lot of weathering on an upper area of the tower. So you can see that this is a lot of the original brick and tuck pointing. That wash that I talked about will blend this in, take away little bits of excess along the edges, and then that will blend in nicely. So this is a picture that I will take credit for. So this is the North Tower, north side of the North Tower, and this is what, if we've ever looked up there, and we're accustomed to seeing the louvers. So the louvers are out. The chicken wire has been installed to keep the bats out of the belfry, right? And this is a temporary.
I think a bat could crawl through those things.
Yeah, well, maybe.
Anyway, we hope it
on
does.
the other side of that. So then, yeah. Well, every now and then we, something finds its way in.
Yeah. So
this is probably, looks a little exaggerated from the view, but when you get up there and you stand at the base of those louvers, from the street, they look maybe like your front door, right? You get up there and they're probably 25 feet high from the base on up. And there's actually two of these oak beams. They're enormous oak beams, and they're in tremendous shape. They're in great shape for 110 years, essentially exposed to the weather. The bell tower is, the belfry is open. There's a roof membrane down below, but it's essentially open to the elements. So certainly the louvers help. But this is a part of the project that is going to be happening relatively soon, prior to that scaffolding coming down. These openings, these apertures, all 8 of them are going to be replaced with new louvers that will be custom fabricated out of aluminum that will match the old color. The jamb will also be reconstructed of aluminum. They'll essentially be maintenance free, and it's going to be, over the long run, a major cost saver, I'll say, in that the care and maintenance of those louvers is very difficult, very expensive. And again, it's the access and the prospect of having to put scaffolding up, to do those right in terms of maintaining them over the years, is tremendously expensive. So the project at about 1.3 million, about $250,000 of it was the scaffolding.
Yeah.
So very, very costly. So we're gonna have I'll say freedom from worry relative to what it's going to take to keep those louvers in good shape going forward. So that's kind of a pretty cool aspect, I think, of the project.
Sure.
And I
Well,
think
is a
that
great
is
picture,
my
Jeff.
last photo. It is.
That is a
So,
great photo, Jeff, by the way.
yeah, it's
Very-
cool.
very dynamic.
Yeah.
So, so we're on track, we're ahead of schedule, under budget, etc. What is it going to look like when it's all done? Someone told me they can't wait to have the scaffolding down so they can see what it looks like. And I said, well, this is what my answer was. I'll see what yours is. I said, well, the scaffolding may be the most impressive part of the project.
Yeah, yeah. So I think when it comes down, when the scaffolding comes down, the church is going to look like it should, right? So I think it's going to look refreshed. I think it's going to look, I'm not going to say new, because heaven forbid, we really don't want it to look new. I mean, we've got some nice patina there, but it's going to be sound. It's going to be in great shape. We do have a phase 2, but there's going to be less to do on phase 2 because of what I think we're going to be able to do, because we're ahead of schedule and under budget here on phase 1. There's going to be a lift coming in that's going to facilitate some additional work on the sides of the church, and we'll see. They think they're about 4 feet away from being able to get at some spots on the lantern that could use some attention. And that would definitely be in phase 2. And if we can get to those corner areas, that would be really nice, right? In terms of taking some care of those areas. So Tom, I don't know if in your historical background there on the church, I think that the lantern was a big deal for the parish in the 1970s, I'm going to say. And it had fallen, I think, into disrepair. I think there were some problems with.
What do we mean by lantern, or what?
Very at the very top of the church, I think it's octagonal.
Right.
Yes.
I don't know if I have.
At the top of the dome.
At the top, yes. So the dome would be the interior, right? I think is that called a lantern?
You could call it that, because it is now lit.
It is now lit. Yeah.
It is now lit, and it was not lit in the early 2000s, as late as that, or as early as that.
Okay.
I'll drop the name. George Flynn, who was a longtime member, a longtime businessman in the city of Wausau, was living in the condos that are on McIndoe. And
okay,
I think the cross street is 5th. And he could see those windows, those dome windows from his condo, and they weren't lit. And
okay.
I do believe, if I remember the story right, that he put up some money to have that re-electrified, and that's why those are lit currently.
So I think, and this is where you really get into speculation, but I think at one time that dome was open at the interior of the church, and you could see up into it.
That's a possibility. That predates anything that I have ever seen. But
I think that would go way back. And so where I'm going with this is that lantern, that dome is tough to get to. And to the extent that we can do anything with it, is a plus, because that's going to be the major piece of phase two. And you don't want that to develop any vulnerability to the elements. So, but
Go ahead.
go ahead.
Well, so we've embarked upon this major renovation or restoration, not renovation, restoration. But I mean, in 110 years, is this the first time that any work has been done on this?
So certainly in some of those upper areas, it's very possible. And there's been some work done in the lower areas, it would appear. And I think it was instances where the work was not sympathetic to the original materials in terms of choosing the proper mortar and how that's going to respond. So the stuff that's essentially at ground level, not a lot was done there. That I think was generally in pretty good shape. A little higher, kind of the higher you go, the worse it was. And I think it's very likely that not much at all was done when you get about halfway up those towers over the years. So, this work, I think conservatively, this is 50-year stuff, conservatively. So it's been done well, it's been done right. And that's a big deal, I think, for I'll say the patrimony of what we're the caretakers of relative to the structure.
Well, isn't that the thing, Jeff and Tom? You could just let it go, or you could just decide it's not worth the money or whatever, but we've been given this patrimony, the word, to use your word. And isn't it our responsibility to take care of it properly, right?
I think it is. I mean, I've done this. I've driven past the church and I've seen the steeples chopped off. They just took them down, and I don't like that. That's the last thing I think anyone really would want to see. And again, it's the work that we've done, and that the parishioners have generously, funded through the campaign. And we have funds from the building restoration care endowment that was started after the prior. That was the reason that was our cause for the prior capital campaign. So people have recognized it. They have stepped up and honored the people that built the church and the people along the way that have kept it from falling to serious disrepair. And now here we are, doing our part. And as the years tick by, decades, there'll be someone who will need to follow up, but we're doing what we can, right? So
right, that's all we can say. We don't know what's going to be here 10, 20, 50
right.
years from now in terms of the people who are the church and how we continue to maintain that legacy.
Right.
Tom, do you have any idea of, are the churches in downtown Wausau, are they all built around the same time, more or less?
More or less. This is probably the oldest. I was going to interject at a couple of points, but Jeff was doing such a good job at that. St. Stephen's, which is just down the street from the St. James building, Resurrection Parish, is pretty much a mirror architectural image of the St. James building. So if you take a look at one and look at the other, you see those similarities. When Jeff was showing the columns, which now are capped with concrete and we're going with stone, if you go to St. Stephen's and look, there are wood caps on there. There are architectural, they look like little steeples. And those happened, if you look at the original plans and the original pictures from the St. James Church, they are there. And they were removed somewhere in the 80s, I think, when that copper roof was put on.
Okay. Huh.
Yeah, I did. I was looking online the other day on, I think it was eBay, and there was a postcard of an image of the church from probably, based on the size of the trees, could have been the 1920s, something like that. And there were some very elaborate decorative metal structures that
Yes.
sat on those caps.
And those still exist on the St. Stephen's example.
So
Yeah.
did they steal the idea? Did they just break in one night and steal the architectural plans?
Well, they were the same architect, right, Tom?
Same architect. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
This game-
also, just for comparison, St. Mary's in Marathon City
Oh,
is
sure.
also the same architect.
Okay, that's cool.
Although they could have been a little more creative from project to project, maybe. They didn't look quite so much alike. But at that time, to have a church in downtown Wausau and a church in Marathon, you know, there was a much greater distance between those two things at that time than there would be now. Well, anything else that either of you want to add? It will be, I loved your comment, Jeff. The church will look like it should look, or the church will look like it should, which of course can be taken in various ways. That's true of the church that gathers there. We should look like the church should look, in terms of who we are, what we do, how we live as disciples of Jesus. So you may hear that line again, but I will attribute it to you, Jeff. The church.
Okay, thank you. Thank you
Church
very
should
much.
look like it should.
Yeah.
So, anything else?
Not for me. It's a great project, and thank you all for
Yeah, well, and it's
making
been
it possible.
fascinating to watch. It's fascinating to watch just the scaffolding and stuff go up, and just imagine what it's like to work up there, especially on some of those windy days. And so, let's conclude with prayer, and then we will conclude our conversation. How's that? Gracious God, we thank you for the legacy that we've been given, the history of our forebears who brought the faith to our community and helped it to grow through the construction of churches and the sharing of what we believe as disciples of Jesus. Encourage us as we continue to take care of what we've been given. As you prepare your church building to look as it should, help us to look as we should look, as the disciples of your Son, Jesus, who is Lord forever and ever. Amen.
Amen.
Tom and Jeff, thank you very much. And thank you for what both of you do for the well-being of our parishes, in building projects and lots of other things. So
Thank you.
God
Thank you.
bless.